This is Ag Matters PM from the Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network, brought to you by the Iowa Soybean Association, your daily recap of the information that affects Iowa's farmers, producers, and consumers, right here in the heart of the heartland. With reports from our award-winning broadcast team of Dustin Hoffman, Riley Smith, and Mark Magnuson. Now, from the IARN studios in Des Moines, here's Mark Magnuson.
Hello and welcome into Ag Matters PM on the Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network. I'm Mark Magnuson. Today is Wednesday, February 21st, 2024, and we're so glad you can join us for today's show. In today's episode, I will bring you the latest edition of Between the Pods. We will be joined by past president and current District 8 Director Randy Miller. He's with the Iowa Soybean Association. First, let's take a look at the closing markets.
It's time now for the Ag Matters PM Closing Market Summary, your source for market analysis and settlement prices from the day's trade in Chicago, courtesy of the folks at agmarket.net.
At the end of another trading day, we are joined now by Tyler Schau of agmarket.net. Tyler, today in the grains, not a great day market-wise, especially those soybeans taking a tumble. What did we see take place today?
It's an ugly day after, what a lot of people were hoping yesterday was kind of the start of a turnaround. We got a turnaround Tuesday, and it just fell flat on its face here today. You could point to a lot of different things. There was a gap in soybeans yesterday. A lot of people talked about when the Tuesday trade kicked off Monday night, it gapped open higher. There was some talk of some poor weather ahead in South America, and maybe that's what got the market sparked. But by the end of the day, most of those gaps, all except in the March, had gone away. And now today, the failure to hold that and make any type of improvement just led way to selling. And, don't forget, you've got a lot of March basis contracts on corn and beans that I've talked to a lot of producers about. Like they're calling, wanting to know what do we do with them. A lot of elevators are telling us that they've got several contracts of basis that are going to get set or rolled here in the next anywhere from tomorrow through the following Wednesday. First notice day on March corn is going to be next Thursday, and so the trade knows that, the managed money funds know that, and I think they're going to continue to pound the sell side. I'm not saying that we get through next week and all of a sudden it's all rosy and prices drift higher. But, one of the things that we like to remind people, market's job is to inflict as much pain on the participant that's out of position. And unfortunately, right now, there's a lot of producers that are out of position.
Tyler, on the positive side of things, when we think about the news cycle here recently, some reporting being done that shows some potentially positive news for E15 being approved year-round beginning in 2025, and then also some positive, I think, developments towards the biofuel side of things and potentially sustainable aviation fuel here in this country. We know those two things can go a long ways towards building that demand here.
Yeah, we're going to need those. We're going to need the SAF, the sustainable aviation fuel for ethanol for sure. Energy companies are now kind of on the same side as the corn and soybean lobby. That's not always been the case. Used to be they were pretty common foes. Now they're on the same side because now they do have a common foe, and that's the electric vehicle. And there's probably, whether you like them or not, there's no doubt that market share of electric vehicles is going to increase over the next several years, which isn't necessarily positive to ethanol production. So if we can get this SAF, the sustainable aviation fuel, kicked off, and corn ethanol is a part of that, that's really going to help. It is a big deal. I'm not going to beat around the bush on it. There was some rumors out that some people were quoting yesterday that the Biden administration was going to change the way they viewed ethanol and its carbon footprint, which would make it less desirable to include in an SAF program, or at least to qualify for subsidies. But now you've got Vilsack and the head of the EPA that are going to Commodity Classic next week, going to speak on Wednesday at pretty much the exact time the EPA drops their new guidance on how they're going to value that carbon score for ethanol. And so I would find it difficult to believe that they're going to come out and say that they're not going to use ethanol, or they're going to make it more difficult for ethanol to meet the requirements for those subsidies, and announce it to one of the largest trade shows with a large group of farmers.
Tyler, we lost your audio there at the
Positive
very
news
end.
out of the deal.
Oh, now you're back. We could hear you at the very end.
Sorry, did I cut out?
Yeah, it just cut out for like the last 10 seconds. So
Okay.
if you want to just pick up and say where you were about, I don't think they're going to make this announcement at Commodity Classic with a lot of farmers.
Yeah. So we don't think, agmarket.net doesn't think they're going to send Vilsack and the head of the EPA to a large conference full of farmers from the Midwest that depend on corn production for their livelihood to say, hey, we're going to make it more difficult for ethanol to qualify for those subsidies. We think it's probably likely some type of a positive press conference and news release. But again, I mean, that's not going to fix this market overnight. If that does occur, we're talking several weeks to months before months to years before we realize any type of positive traction out of that story.
And we look forward to covering that next week as well. Commodity Classic, which you mentioned, we will be there with the coverage as we are every year. Tyler, let's switch over to the other side of the ag marketplace. Was it as ugly of a day for the livestock today? How did the livestock fare?
Livestock, no, not nearly. I mean, it was a good day on the livestock side. Your nearby feeder cattle and fat cattle contracts they're going to be in the red and close down on the day, just minimally. They've been on a pretty good run, narrowing up some of those spreads between the back months over the last couple of weeks. So taking a little bit of a breather there. The rest of them are up, 57 cents in April feeders, $1 in May feeders, about 35 cents across the board in your back month fat cattle. Hogs kind of had wouldn't say a nothing day, slightly up in your upfront contracts, slightly down in some of your summer contracts. The hog market, I would say, is really at a spot where there's some indecision going on. You're back up in your nearby your April hogs. You're pushing on some of those July and September highs. We actually broke through them. The next target is the late June high. But this market has done a lot of rallying since the first of the year. So, we're $14, $15 off the lows from early January. So it's at a pivotal spot. You've probably heard us say before, hogs like to make V bottoms and V tops. So the question is, it going to shoot higher and create more of a V to the top side, or is this the top? Is it working its way lower? And I don't think the market really knows based on how it's kind of traded back and forth over the last couple of days.
Thanks so much for the information here today, Tyler. But what is the best way for our listeners to get in touch for even more marketing information?
Check us out on the website, agmarket.net. There's a contact page where you can look up, see if there's a broker in your area.
Tyler Schau, agmarket.net, our guest here today. Tyler, thank you so much for the time. As always, appreciate it. Have a great rest of your week.
You bet. Take care, guys.
Thank you to Tyler Schau of agmarket.net for our market summary today. Let's turn now to the closing numbers, which can be found under the Markets tab on our website at iowaagnet.com.
March corn is down 7 3/4 at $4.11 even. March soybeans down 18 1/4 at $11.60 3/4. March soybean meal down $5.60 at $3.42 even. March soybean oil down 58 cents at $44.83. Chicago wheat up a half cent at $5.83 1/4. Minneapolis wheat down 6 1/4 at $6.59 1/4. And Kansas City hard red wheat down 8 1/2 at $5.77 1/4. March oats down 9 3/4 at $3.70 1/4. On the Merc, April live cattle up 37 cents at $187.70. March feeder cattle down 2 cents at $251.35. April lean hogs up 30 cents at $85.97. April pork cutout up 50 cents at $92 even, and Class 3 milk down a penny at $16.98.
And that's our market coverage for today. It is time now to hear from our sponsor, the Iowa Soybean Association and the Soybean Checkoff. And up next, it is the latest edition of Between the Pods with Randy Miller of the Iowa Soybean Association.
Iowa Soybean Association is driven to deliver for Iowa's 40,000 soybean farmers. We're proud to provide objective agronomic research, a helping hand with soil and water stewardship, and timely industry news powered by the Soybean Checkoff. Learn more at iasoybeans.com.
It's time to go between the pods with the Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network and the Iowa Soybean Association. For the next year, we will explore the ways Iowa-grown soybeans are making a difference at home and around the world. Now, here's your host of Between the Pods, Mark Magnuson.
Mark Magnuson for the Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network, and I'm here today at Farm Forward. It is an Iowa Soybean Association event in downtown Des Moines, and I'm with Randy Miller. He is the past president of the Iowa Soybean Association and now a board member with ISA. And Randy recently took a trip where you were on a fact-finding mission. You were there to learn a lot and find out a lot in New York. Could you tell us what your trip was surrounded around, what you were there to do?
Well, it was a trip put on by Clean Fuels Alliance of America. The Clean Fuels is the representative for the biodiesel industry in fuels. We went out there just to see what New York was doing, learn about what they've been doing and where they're headed in the future with biofuels.
And they've been a pretty serious adopter of biodiesel. Could you tell us what kind of setup we're looking at with the biodiesel in that state?
That's been going on for over 20 years, them implementing that. They want to reduce their emissions by 50% by 2025. So the only way to get there today quickly is biofuels. That's the answer today to get to lower carbon emissions. So they've embraced that completely. They run biodiesel in all of their fleets, their police, fire, snow plows, park tractors and lawnmowers and stuff. They run biodiesel in everything.
And when we talk about that as well, Randy, it's not just that it is kind of a go-between maybe to eventually get to an electric vehicle or to whatever your goal may be, but it gives you that reliability factor with biodiesel, doesn't it? Because when you're talking about some of these vehicles, buses, police cars, those types of things, they have to run.
They have to run, and that's the main driver for them. Their snowplows run on 12-hour shifts. For them to electrify that, the batteries will only last 4 hours. They've got to quadruple their fleet. It just doesn't make economic sense for them where they can run biodiesel, renewable diesel, and do it immediately and have all the benefits.
How widespread is that adopted throughout the country? Are there a lot of large cities that have fully taken on biodiesel in the way that New York has?
There's Milwaukee has taken it on, not like New York. I mean, they've mandated some of that stuff of running B5 to B20, so it's just a really good story of what farmer investment through the checkoff to build a demand for something that was one time a byproduct, and we had too much of it and didn't know what to do with it. And now it's become the driving force behind soybean production, competing with the price of to raise the price of soybeans to the same value as what meal does.
So, Randy, what was the viewpoint from their perspective? Did they talk about how this adoption process has worked and whether or not they're fully on board with it, or were there any questions from them still about the viability of it?
There's no questions about viability. It's proven to them. They've seen that they can do it. They've ran it for 10 years. They've used 450 million gallon. So they know it works. It's just a matter of getting everybody on board and be sure everybody knows the facts and knows what's going on. But no, the city of New York is fully engaged in using biofuels.
So what I'm hearing is potential then for a big expansion elsewhere.
I would think that them setting themselves up in the Northeast where it's as cold as it gets, as much snow as you get, that would be a pretty good example of you can make it work. It's just a matter of you have to decide you want to make it work.
Let's talk about some other of the uses for biofuels and specifically home heating. How does that work exactly, and how widely adopted is that?
In New York, there's a mandate of B20 blends for home heating oil. So they're going to mandate that to be used in all the home heating oil because in the Northeast, most of those houses don't have the infrastructure to go to gas, like natural gas or LP. They're furnaces that are put in the houses. There's a barrel in the basement. They fill them, and they're kind of locked into that because of infrastructure. So this is once again, the quickest, the simplest way to lower your carbon scores to help the environment in those big cities is to run a B20 blend in their bioheat.
And that is then pretty popular in that city as far as just being widespread?
For the most part, they've adopted it the same as they have in their vehicles, and they just run it, and that's the way it is. Like I said, the mandate is to increase to 50% by 2035. So that's a huge leap in gallons.
Randy, where are some other areas that you've seen the expansion of that demand that has been built and has, I guess, allowed farmers here in Iowa to feel good about that, seeing this expansion happen right in front of their eyes?
The ports in New York and New Jersey, they're starting to use them in their biodiesel on their ships and things like that for maritime. So any of that use is huge. Biodiesel provides a 13% bump to the price of soybeans. That's what it adds, is 13% of the value. So anytime you can increase the amount of biofuels in any sort of transportation or heating circumstance, that's where you're going to get a bump in usage, and it's going to help.
Randy, when you're conversing with your fellow farmers here in Iowa, do they appreciate the work that goes into getting these markets like New York to adopt biodiesel in so heavily?
I would hope that they would see the value in what farmers have done with the checkoff over the last 30 years to develop a market for a product that was one time just a byproduct and didn't have a value. It was sitting in tanks and we couldn't get rid of it, to something that drives up to 50% of the price of a soybean.
And when you think about byproducts, and we talk about it a lot, we're going to have a lot of products or a lot of uses for soybean meal here going forward. So it's kind of you can look at it and see kind of the playbook that has been laid out ahead of time.
Yes, it's gonna cheapen up livestock production in the United States greatly by doing this, and it's going to make us more competitive on a world market for shipping meal. So it's a win-win to me.
Randy, is there anything else you'd like to let our listeners, our viewers here in Iowa, know about that trip that you took, or just any of the uses that are being utilized by biodiesel?
I would just say, if any of them have questions about any of this stuff we've covered, to go to iasoybeans.com, and they can find out information on the checkoff, on research, supply, any of that kind of stuff. They want to find information out, it would be on the website.
Our guest here today on Between the Pods, Randy Miller. He is with the Iowa Soybean Association. Randy, always good to talk to you. Thanks so much for the information. Have a great rest of the Farm Forward event.
Thank you.
And thank you once again to Randy Miller with the Iowa Soybean Association. And that brings us to the end of today's show. You can find all of our content on our website at iowaagnet.com. You can also follow us on social media on Facebook, X, LinkedIn, and TikTok. And you can find our video content as well as previous episodes of AM/PM on our YouTube channel. Don't forget as well our free twice daily market podcast, which are found on Apple, Amazon, Google, Spotify, and Podbean. From the Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network studios in Des Moines, I'm Mark Magnuson. On behalf of Riley Smith, Dustin Huffman, and Andy Peterson, we thank you for watching. This has been Ag Matters PM.